Assalamu alaikum, this is Megan Wyatt answering your question here at About Islam. So you're a 21-year-old college student, you're studying clinical psychology, and in college is the first time you learned that children were a byproduct of sexual intercourse and that was something that non-Muslims did, but Muslims do too. And that was something you didn't realize because you were raised, it sounds like, to think of sex as something dirty, sex as something that's haram, sex as something that, non-Muslims, the kuffar do and things like that. And that's really unfortunate because one of the ways that people try to prevent illegal sexual intercourse, which is zina within Islam, is by scaring and terrorizing, Muslim kids from the time they're young to think of the concept of sex as something very dirty, very bad, very evil, very inappropriate, very undignified, and of course throwing that haram word to it so that kids they can't even become educated about it. And so, it's a topic that they don't know anything about. And what's even more interesting is then from there, people get married still not having any proper knowledge and understanding of how the body works and how sexual intercourse is supposed to work for both men and women. And so I'm actually glad and relieved to know that you're finally getting an education on this topic, because one day, inshallah, you're going to be a married woman, and it's important that you know not only what sex is about, but that sex isn't just something for men, which is usually the next stereotype, that it's something for women too, and that it's a really important ingredient for a healthy, loving marriage, actually. One of the things that I often teach in my courses and just sort of reflect on with my audience is that sexual intimacy is one of the highest experiences of love between a husband and a wife. And within the right context of marriage, it's something that has a spiritual focal point as well as an emotional focal point, and then of course the physical part of it. For Muslims, before they are intimate, there's a dua to be made, and there is an adab around intercourse, and there's an adab around sexual experiences, and it's not something considered dirty or shameful for us as Muslims. In fact, we could say that Islam is a sex-positive religion. In other words, we look at sex and sexuality as a positive thing. It's just that there's a time and place for it, and that is within a marriage between a man and a woman. But there's not supposed to be any shame or feelings that it's dirty attached to it. So now, having said all of that, your question was, now that you know all of these things, you've started to worry about your mind. What if you think it's sexual thoughts? What if you think things? Does that make your mind dirty? Again, I think it's really important to understand the difference between sexual desire itself, even having sexual thoughts, and being a dirty person, right? So for a Muslim, if they recognize that they're having a desire for the opposite gender, there are a couple of different things that you're advised to do. One of them is to fast. And fasting was a way to just naturally, or rather is a way to naturally decrease sexual desire when there isn't an outlet for it, which would be, a healthy marriage. The second recommendation is to lower your gaze, right? Men are advised to lower their gaze, and women are advised to lower their gaze in the Quran. And the reason for that is so there is a reduction in thoughts that lead to lustful feelings or thoughts or ideas. So say you see someone and you find them attractive, well, what you're supposed to do after that is lower your gaze. And there's really another step after that, and that is looking at your mind and not allowing your mind to indulge itself in thinking about another person in a sexual manner who's not halal for you, basically your spouse. So there are these steps: fasting until you can be married, lowering the gaze, and then also, doing your best to close off your mind from thinking consistently about someone or lusting after someone that you're not supposed to be lusting after. With that comes being mindful of what you watch on television, the kinds of things you expose yourself to. But in and of itself, the desire for someone doesn't make you a dirty person or a bad person or a terrible person. And I think that association is there because, again, you were raised to think that this dirty thing and these dirty thoughts only belonged to people who aren't Muslim, which is really problematic too, because it kind of sounds like there was this idea that non-Muslims are all dirty, terrible people, which we don't think like that as Muslims. That's not something in line with Islam, to just look at everyone who's not Muslim and be like, yeah, they all do this horrible thing. That's not the way we're supposed to look at people either. But moving past that, It's really important at this point you recognize you're going to have desires, you're going to have thoughts. It's what you do with them which are most important. But from where you are right now, it's important to know, yes, you might have desires at some point, you might think about something at some point, but what are you going to do once you recognize that? Will you lower your gaze? Will you maybe make istighfar, ask Allah to forgive you, make dhikr, just do things to change what your mind is focused on. Those are the important steps that you can take, but don't sit around being like freaking out, wondering if you're a bad person or a dirty person because you think there's a possibility that your mind might start thinking sexual things. And especially because you didn't really have any education before this, I think all of it coming at once sounds like it's been a bit of a shock for you, but I don't think it's going to stay like this. I think you're going to come to terms with, just how things are, recognize that this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created human beings, and this is a natural part of being a human being, and as a result, it's a natural part for you too. So again, it's how you handle thoughts and desires which is most important. And then from there, the next step, aside from educating yourself further about, sex and sexual experiences, is, being prepared for getting married and looking forward to that as a part of your life. Looking forward to, a healthy sexual relationship with your spouse also doesn't make you dirty. It also doesn't make you bad. It makes you normal. So I hope that this helps just give you some assurance that it's okay and you're going to be okay. And again, I'm grateful that you're being educated on this topic, because now you will know moving forward the importance of making sure that our youth are also properly educated on this subject so that they understand the world that they're in, and they also understand and can appreciate the Islamic boundaries around, sex and the topic of sexual desire. So if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. May Allah bless you in your studies, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you to be of those whom He loves and does deeds that He loves. Assalamu alaikum.